Hello, I'm State Representative Peter Stautberg from the 34th House District. Welcome to Ohio in Focus.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Ohio in Focus, a program that brings state government to you. I'm your host, Mike Ditto. We have with us today State Representative Peter Stautberg, who serves the 34th House District, which includes eastern portions of Hamilton County. Representative Stautberg, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
So you are a second-term representative from Hamilton County, currently residing in Anderson Township. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your district and your background and all the good things about you.
Well, thank you. I'm born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio, in the middle part of the city, and lived there pretty much my whole life except for going to school. Mm-hmm. I'm a lawyer, and my family resides there now. My wife and two children. I still have my other brothers and sisters as well live in the area as well. I'm an attorney with Fifth Third Bank. Is my part-time job, other than serving as a state legislator. Went to school at Kenyon College in the middle of Ohio, got an MBA from Ohio State, and then decided to pursue a law degree there. So I worked in a couple of law firms along the way. And in about 2008, decided to pursue this opportunity which came available. There was an opening in the House for the House seat covering that part of town, and it was a good opportunity. My family and I talked about it and decided to take a run.
What inspired you to run? Was it your family? Was it friends encouraging you? What was your inspiration for doing so?
A little bit of everything, but it's really goes back to a drive to serve the community. Public service, community service, whatever you call it, can take a number of different forms. But it's a drive to give back, and I've always have had that drive, inspired by my parents, of course, and it was an opportunity to give back in a meaningful way and contribute to the state.
One of the duties of a state legislator, obviously, is to serve on a number of committees. Tell us and your constituents about the committees that you serve on currently.
Well, currently I chair the Public Utilities Committee, and I'm honored to do that as asked by Speaker Batchelder. And I also serve on the Financial Institutions Committee as well as on Ways and Means.
You've been up here for 3 years now. You've had one term in the minority and half of one term in the majority. What have your experiences been like, and what is a typical day for you around here, if there is a typical day?
Well, there is no typical day. It's jam-packed full of meetings, but it was interesting. In the first 2 years I was here serving in the minority, the approach was to basically do what we could with respect to the number of bills that were out there. There were some bills which were bipartisan in nature that you could agree with the other side of the aisle and get some good work done. There were other bills with which we had serious disagreements, and in that respect, I felt one of the jobs that we had was to try to make the bills less threatening. And we would still vote no on those bills, but in the meantime, we would work with them to try to at least make the bills a little bit better before they came out of the House. Now in the majority, it's a different, there's a different approach that we take. We control the agenda, and with that control, there's a lot of responsibility that goes along with that. Mm-hmm. There's a number of different interest groups that want to meet with you at all times. So when I'm up here on most Tuesdays and Wednesdays and some Thursdays, we are either meeting with people in the office or in committees or actually in session. And it's soliciting input from the various stakeholders, getting their ideas, working with the legislation, working with the sponsors of the bill. And of course, this is mostly in my role as chair of the Public Utilities Committee.
Being in the majority, and in 2011, there's been a number of legislative initiatives that have caught statewide and national attention. Among them certainly was the budget that faced a shortfall. Tell us about the budget and other bills that you've worked on this session so far, if you would.
Sure. I mean, it's been very hectic and very busy, but it's been a lot of good work. And the budget was House Bill 153, and it was It was tough. We were facing a revenue shortfall between $7 and $8 billion, and that's a structural deficit. We were spending that much money, and we weren't going to have that kind of revenue, so we needed to do something. And the governor showed leadership, and our House caucus showed leadership in closing that gap. And it hurts everywhere, but we did it in a responsible and fair manner, and closed that gap without raising taxes. And in fact, one of the things I'm most proud about is within that budget bill, we eliminated the estate tax. And that is something that was very important to me. When I got to Columbus, or when I came up in the majority in January 2011, I actually chaired the Ways and Means Committee. And we had House Bill 3 go through that committee, which was eliminating the estate tax. So I worked on that, and I worked on passing that out of committee. And that language in House Bill 3 ultimately wound up in the budget and eliminated the estate tax. So the other thing that happened in the budget, which I think is very beneficial, is we continued the rollback. There was a 21% over time rollback of income taxes, which was put on hold by Governor Strickland in 2010, and then we were able to put that in the budget and continue that reduction in income tax rates.
Other bills that you've worked on this General Assembly aside from the budget, I know that you've discussed jobs and job creation and bringing more employers to Ohio. Anything along those lines that you are particularly proud of from your first year?
Well, I think as a caucus, we worked very hard on focusing on job creations. And right out of the gate, we passed House Bill 1, which was sponsored by Representative Duffy. And that created Jobs Ohio, which is a different approach to economic development. It basically took part of the Department of Development and split it off into a company, a group that would go out and solicit and retain jobs in Ohio. It'll be a nonprofit organization, but it'll have the ability to go out and do some significant work with attracting companies to Ohio. And that is starting to show some returns, because I think we retained and created about 83,000 jobs in 2011 alone. So we're making good progress.
You also worked on a bill dealing with the Common Sense Initiative, which has been talked about widely statewide. Can you tell us a little bit about that bill?
Yeah, Common Sense Initiative, which is Senate Bill, wound up being Senate Bill 2. It's a great bill. It creates or focuses the agency rule review and the agencies imposing regulations to make sure that their regulations are not creating undue burdens on businesses. As everyone knows in Columbus and throughout the state, businesses are overburdened with regulations. And what this does is makes the agencies accountable for what they're passing and have them take a second look and saying, what is the impact on businesses in Ohio? And if it's too much of a burden, then they have to change that regulation.
As chair of the Public Utilities Committee, you've also sponsored and worked on legislation dealing with utilities, natural gas, other things. What are some of those items that you've worked on?
Well, I'm particularly proud of House Bill 95, which was a bill that I sponsored. We worked on about the middle of the year, and we got out of the House and passed by the Senate, and the governor signed. And basically, it updates and reforms the regulations by which natural gas utilities operate. And we have a new era now where the natural gas, the commodity itself, is not regulated. You can go out, the customer can go out and buy the natural gas from a variety of companies, but the pipes in the ground and getting it to the customers themselves is still the regulated part of that business. And what this does is, modernizes the way we go about regulating them. What they have to file, when, for what time frames these rate requests are important, because what we were seeing was they would file for a rate request, and then by the time they were finished, it would be a couple years down the line, and it led to what we call regulatory lag. So this updated things and made it simpler. It streamlines the way we provide notices for hearings, and it was overall a good bill, which would lead to a decreased cost for consumers, we believe.
You also worked on a bill dealing with securitization. Could you tell us a little bit about that as well?
Sure. That one just passed toward the end of the last year and was signed by the governor. And again, it's a very important bill. There's electric utilities from time to time will have deferred costs, which will be costs they incurred that they're allowed to recoup from consumers. And those are carried at an interest rate, which is basically around 8 or 9, 10%. And those costs are passed on to the consumers. What this bill allows is for the electric utility to go out to the market and with certainty, a little more certainty than a typical PUCO proceeding, take it to market and get those bonded off. And they would, the language allows them to get a AAA rating, which will be a significantly reduced interest rate, and therefore the consumers would pay less on their end. And again, it's a consumer-friendly bill, and we're very proud to have sponsored that and passed that.
Sounds like both of those bills are really aimed at consumer protection, which is certainly a good thing for everybody. The state of Ohio and the nation have been largely focused over the last few years on jobs and the economy. We've had a lagging economy over a number of years, and some would argue that it's starting to turn around. What are the primary issues facing the 34th House District today? Well,
we are a bedroom community with a number of small employers there. We have a broad range of income levels, and so we face everything. We face significant job loss in our area. Some people have not been impacted, so there's a balance that we need to work through to try to get people back to work. And again, it's creating a tax structure which is a little more friendly to businesses, creating a regulatory structure which is a little more friendly to businesses, and to get people back to work, because once people get back to work, then the economy starts to kick again, and everybody benefits from that.
What would you say that you enjoy the most about being a state legislator?
I enjoy having an impact on our local communities and on our state. It's good work. You're able to deal with a lot of people, have a lot of discussions, and try to work through the various interest groups so that you can hit a good resolution. And you're not going to favor one group at the expense of another, but you're able to go home at the end of the day and tell your neighbors and friends that, hey, this is what I did for my neighborhood, and that's important to me.
In this General Assembly, it's been discussed by the Republican caucus that there's been a number of job initiatives and other things, but there are also some social issues out there that have been discussed. Any of those that you would want to touch on and explain to the folks back home what you've been working on?
Well, we've had a number of bills which are important to a number of people, and basically, you know, I'm a pro-life person myself, and we had a number of pro-life pieces of legislation pass. The one getting most attention is the heartbeat bill, which says that if you can detect a fetal heartbeat, that baby will not be aborted, and that's significant. We're moving toward a place, hopefully, that will save babies. And there's a number of other provisions in there also to not allow funding for Planned Parenthood, which we believe leads to more abortions. So we're quite pleased to try to trim that back as well.
We've got about 1 minute left. Can you tell your constituents either anything else that we didn't cover today, or the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, the best way to get in touch with me, of course, is to call my office or send me an email at district34@ohr.state.oh.us.
Good memory.
I try, or you can call the office. You can look me up on the website and get in touch with me. And you know, I meet with everybody wherever they want down the district. Frequently at a little coffee shop or a bread and sandwich shop.
Beautiful.
And that's where I like to get together with people who are at the library and hear their concerns.
Excellent. Well, Representative, thanks for taking a little bit of time with us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike.
And hopefully you'll come back sometime maybe in the summer. We can talk about what's happening in 2012.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. We look forward to seeing you again here on the next edition of Ohio in Focus. Thanks to Representative Peter Stautberg for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you here again.